Hey, what's going on, guys? Team Fusion here, back with another video. And in today's video, I'm doing a super Vehicroid deck profile. Now, Vehicroids have always been on my mind for a potential deck build, but I didn't really build them until we got the new Dragonroid and Brothers of Legend. Dragonroid really just helps out the deck. It's a good searcher, plus it can assist with fusion summoning. Overall, this deck can kit out some pretty big fusion monsters. So, let's get right into it. Starting things off, I run 3 copies of the new Dragonroid. The Dragonroid, pretty much, you can discard it to add a non-wind Roid monster from your deck to your hand. And the reason they have the non-wind Roid thing in the effect is because of Speedroids, because they're technically Roid monsters, even though they could have just said, you know, except for Speedroid monsters, because apparently that would have killed them. And his other effect, the activation of cards and effects that would, pretty much allow you to fusion summon can't be negated. So, like, you activate Vehicroid Connection Zone or Power Bond, they can't negate that. Which, can be really, really useful. Next up, I run 3 copies of Expressroid. Well, let me scooch this over to the side a bit. What Expressroid does, you can contribute 1 machine monster to special summon a non-wind Roid monster from your deck. Again, Speedroids are technically Roids, very annoying. And then you could pay half your life points and banish any number of machine monsters in your graveyard, including this card. Special summon from your extra deck 1 Roid fusion monster with the same level as the number of banished monsters, ignoring the summoning conditions. Pretty useful for its graveyard effect, and it's just on the field effect, attributed off to summon a Roid monster. And why is this a machine? Haha. Why is this a wind? I don't know. Probably would have made more sense to be an earth. Next up, I run 3 Expressroid. What Expressroid does is upon summon, you can target 2 Roid monsters in your graveyard, except for Expressroid, and add them back to your hand. This way you can get, Dragonroid back to your hand, or, Expressroid back to your hand. Overall, just like a really good card. That's the last of the monster 3-ofs. Getting into the 2-ofs, to Steamroid. And what Steamroid does is if this card attacks your opponent, it increases the attack of this card by 500 points during the damage step only, and if this card's attack, it loses 500. Steamroid is used for one of the fusion monsters of this deck. Alright, next up, I run 2 copies of Drillroid. Drillroid, again, is used for a fusion monster in this deck, so if it attacks a defense position monster, destroy that monster without inflicting damage calculation. Not as useful, but it can still be used. Next up, 2 copies of Truckroid, another monster used for, a fusion monster. And if he destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, equip that card to this card and it gains the attack points of the combined monster's attack. And, his 1,000 attack points doesn't really make that effect useful, but we'll explain why it can be. Getting into the 1-ofs, 1 Submarineroid, another monster used for a fusion summon. He can attack directly, but, only 800 damage, not much, but you can also choose to switch him to defense mode later, like once you've attacked, which is good because you can just drop an attack, get some chip damage off, switch him into defense mode. Next up, 1 Ambulance Roid. Like, you're going to see this for, the rest of the fusion materials, or the rest of the monsters I have here. They're fusion materials for other fusions. And when a Roid monster is added from your graveyard to your hand, you can special summon that monster, which, if you manage to combo this with Expressroid, you can spec 2 other Roid monsters. I run 1 copy of Rescueroid. Again, this is only for fusion summoning. I don't ever really summon this. I run 1 Stealthroid, once again, just for fusion summoning. And 1 Gyroid, again, for just fusion summoning. Getting into the spell cards, I run 3 copies. Megaroid City. Vehicroids have their own field spell. Can you believe it? And what they do is you can target 1 other card you control, destroy it, and if you do, add 1 Roid card from your deck to your hand. During damage calculation, if your Roid monster battles, you can send one Roid monster from your deck to the graveyard, switch the original attack events of your Roid monster. So, for example, you can use this with Truckroid. So you switch his 1,000 attack with his 2,000 defense, so basically he has 2,000 attack, allowing you to destroy a monster easily. Well, not easily, but, You can only use each effect once per turn. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for fusion monsters the turn you activate the effect. Next up, I run the fusion spell. Vehicroid Connection Zone. Fusion summon 1 Vehicroid monster fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and its effects cannot be negated. This is your fusion spell for summoning the Super Vehicroid monsters from your extra deck. Next up, just for a good bit of consistency, 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. Now, in this deck, there are multiple fusion monsters that require like super specific materials. This is just a good way to get them out. So what this does is you can reveal fusion monster in your extra deck, and especially one of the like specified fusion materials from your deck, and its effects are not negated. So Expressroid is a fusion material, so you can just spec Expressroid from your deck and get its effect off, which can be really, really useful. Next up, as this is a Cyrus deck, I do run the 2 Power Bond. Also, it's just a good machine fusion card. So what it does is fusion summon a machine monster from your extra deck, and when that monster is summoned, its attack points are doubled, but at the end of the turn, you take damage equal to the gained attack. So you can drop a big fusion monster, but at the end of the turn, you're going to take a lot of damage, probably. Next up, as I said, they require a bunch of specific fusion materials. I run the 2 Future Fusion. So during your first standby after this card's activation, show a fusion monster in your extra deck, and then send the fusion materials from your deck to the graveyard. And then the next standby phase, you drop the fusion material from your extra deck. If this card is destroyed, the fusion monster goes with it. Just only 2 1-ofs, 1 limited removal, as this is a machine deck, and 1 terraforming to search out Megaroid City. Getting into the traps, I run 3 copies of Supercharge. If your Roid monster is attacked, you can draw 2 cards, which, you know, doesn't do anything for the attack. You're still getting attacked, but you draw 2 cards, which can be proved useful. Next up, I run 2 of the Roid counter trap. Again, they have a counter trap. Run a spell or trap or monster effect is activated while you control a Roid fusion monster. Negate the activation, and then send all cards with that name from your opponent's deck to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard, and then target 1 Roid monster in your graveyard. Add it to your hand. Can be really useful. If you want to run this at 3, go right ahead. Maybe take out like 1 supercharge for it. Now we're getting into the fusion monsters. Starting things off, the so-called boss monster of this deck, Super Vehicroid Mobile Base, requires a Roid fusion monster and a Roid monster. You can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, especially when 1 Roid monster from your deck or extra deck with attack less than or equal to that monster. So pretty much you can use him to drop like a Super Vehicroid or Vehicroid from your extra deck. You can use him to just drop another fusion monster, which, you know, that's pretty good. You can only use that effect once per turn, and once per turn, during the end phase, you can target a Roid monster in your main monster zone, other than this card, return that monster to the hand, and then change this card's column. That effect's not that useful. It's not really that useful. The first effect's amazing, because you can just drop a, say for example, you can just drop a Stealth Union from your extra deck. That's good. Next up, I run 1 Super Vehicroid Jumbo Drill. Requires Steamroid, Drilleroid, and Submarine Roid. So pretty much, he does piercing battle damage to your opponent. And he has 3,000 solid attack. Perfect with Power Bond, I will say. Yeah. Next up, I run 1 Super Vehicroid Stealth Union. It requires Truckroid, Expressroid, Drilleroid, and Stealthroid. That's what I'm saying. Like, they require super specific materials, which is why I have both Future Fusion and Fusion Deployment. And what he does is once per turn, you can target a face-up non-machine monster on the field, equip this card to that target, and while it's equipped with the monster, by this effect, it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. If this card attacks, its original attack is halved. If this card attacks against position monster, inflict piercing damage. That half effect's not that good, which is why I definitely, you know, maybe try to summon it out with Power Bond, or maybe, like, as soon as you drop it, use Limiter. So maybe you can try to go for an OTK. Or heck, Power Bond and Limiter at the same time. Just OTK them. Next up, I run 2 copies of Vehicroid. This card requires 2 machine monsters with the same name, and he can attack directly. So, you know, Power Bond, Limiter removal, attack directly. Big damage. This is the fusion monster that requires Rescueroid and Ambulance Roid. Ambulance Rescueroid. And this monster cannot be special except by fusion summon. Once per turn, when a monster on your side of the field is destroyed by and sent to the graveyard, special summon that monster in defense position. So again, like, any monster that you have is destroyed, spec it back. Which can be good if, you know, an Expressroid is destroyed, summon it back. I run this next card just for jokes. I run Steam Gyroid, who requires Steamroid and Gyroid. 2200 attack, no effect. I honestly just use this card as a joke. I don't really go into it that often. And closing up the extra deck, I run 1 Barbaroid, the ultimate battle machine. He requires 5 machine Roid type monsters. And this dude is a beast. He can make 2 attacks during each battle phase. He can't attack directly, and if this card attacks an opponent's monster, negate that monster's effects. And including in the graveyard. And if this card destroys an opponent's monster for battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict 1,000 points of damage. This dude's a beast, but a little difficult to actually bring out. But if you do, I keep bringing it Power Bond Limiter Removal. Boom! Anyways, that is my Vehicroid deck profile. If you have enjoyed, make sure to comment, and subscribe. If you subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload. And, if you want to throw down a comment in the comments section, go right ahead. I'll respond. Anyways, bye.